Hey guys, this is Zach with Team Covenant. We are here at GenCon 2014, and I am joined by Steven from Team Covenant.
Howdy.
We have a very special guest with us today, someone I have an immense amount of respect for, and I'm excited to sit down and talk to. Eric Lang, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Of course.
You're welcome. You can tell it's Sunday.
It is Sunday. Eric, for those of you watching that may not have a clue, you'll probably be like, hey, that name's really familiar. But Eric is the designer of pretty much all the best games.
All the best games.
All the best
Except that
games.
one game. That one
Except
game.
that one, yeah. So, if you don't mind, give us a smattering of a couple of the games you designed. So, I mean, like Star Wars, what all have you designed that our viewers might know of?
Well, so Game of Thrones, LCG, Cthulhu, Warhammer Invasion, Warhammer Conquest, Star Wars. I did not do Netrunner or Lord of the Rings.
Okay, yeah.
And a bunch of board games. Did work on Warhammer, Chaos in the Old World.
You also did XCOM, right?
And XCOM that just came out.
Yep.
That is coming out.
Coming out, yeah.
I did some World of Warcraft, the board game, way back when. I did some of the little Silverline games from way back when. That's the stuff I did for Fantasy Flight.
You also had some involvement in Dice Masters, right?
Yeah, co-designed Dice Masters with Mike Elliott and Couriers, and of course I've done stuff for Cool Mini or Not with like Chaos Ball and Arcadia Quest and the others, the horror game that they're talking about, which is coming out at the end of this year, and another game I'm not allowed to talk about.
Of course.
Excellent.
Well, that's awesome. All those are some of my favorite games, so I'm really glad to be sitting down with you.
That's awesome. Well, I watch you guys talk about on Board Game Geek. I see your videos talking about the unboxing of all the cycles, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. I'm glad to know you watch. I'm gonna have to be careful now.
That's right.
So
One where you talked about how I have no idea what I'm doing.
must have been that first Star Wars pack in this cycle. All right. So can you give me a rundown of just what exactly you do, right? Because I don't want people to be confused on, do you make every Game of Thrones card that comes out? Because I know that's not true. But what's your role in the game design? Excellent. In the game design process.
Oh, sure. So, it's different for every company, but for Fantasy Flight, Fantasy Flight games, I provide the original design document, and I work
Like the
through
core rules.
right, the core rules and and generally like most of the core set. And of course, I work with the developers on the core set, but because the core set cards are an extension of the core set rules. Right? They set the tone, they set the blueprints of the where all the different strategies are, what factions can do what, etc., etc. And so I do most of the core work. And with Warhammer, I did it with Nate and Brad. It was pretty collaborative on that one. In some cases, I'll come up with something in Canada, bring it down, and go here it is, and then we refine it as collaboratively.
Yeah.
And then I provide a bunch of cards for like 6 months to a year. There's a period where I'm responsible for the final design, and that slowly flips over after that period of time to the developers here, and I just switch to a consultant.
So you kind of slowly pass the torch, and then at that point, you're just a consultant.
Right. Well, I mean, I still like write Brad and Nate all the time. I send them an email like, oh, I got some cool Star Wars cards, or like I've been doing invasion design since right up until the end. I'd always send emails and say, hey, I got this cool mechanic, this cool cycle.
Yeah.
But I'm just more behind the scenes of that.
So I'm curious, as a game designer, right? To come up with, say, Conquest, like the concept to come up
Conquest.
with the concept for Conquest.
Mm-hmm.
What is the design process like for you? Where does it start, and then how do you what does that look like for you?
Well, so it's different every game, right?
Okay.
It has to be, because otherwise I get bored. So it's hard to answer in the abstract, but usually I'll have a vision, and the vision part is a little collaborative too. I usually I fly down, talk to the powers that be at FFG, and I'll also talk to Nate and Brad and Matt and Lucas and stuff. And I'll come up with something. Usually, sometimes in the middle of the night, I'll be like, yes, this is it, right? Or if it's like Warhammer, it's a property that I love. Like I've had an idea for a Warhammer game for a long, long time. So
yeah. That was
before Star Wars LCG, I'd known what I wanted to do for Warhammer 40K LCG. in broad strokes. So I mean that's years old. So it just came for this one. It was just refining my idea of what it was. I knew it was going to be a game of interplanetary conquest. I knew there was going to be a battle. I knew it was going to be like a storyline combat. We were going to go from planet to planet to planet. I knew that was going to. I knew I want the way units battles work to be a little bit more brutal, a little bit more unforgiving, a little less resource management based, and a little bit more, slightly more like the tabletop, just but faster paced.
Yeah.
Details have worked themselves out, of course, and so we did many versions, but the broad strokes were pretty much in place since day one.
That's awesome.
But in this case, I knew that I wanted a warlord. I knew that this is the game I want. You are a dude.
Yeah.
You're a dude, and after Star, I didn't have the idea for how the pods worked until after Star Wars, because Star Wars did the objective sets. It's like that's really cool. We can't do that for every game, but we can do some version of that, like some part of your deck that is fixed and that you have to build around that provides hidden flavor, right? Hidden complexity for your warlord.
Yeah.
So you could have a blank warlord with like 10 different cards, but those 10 different cards are invisible complexity for that guy, right? They drive in direction in the exact same 45 cards, 40 cards remaining. Switch between two generals have a totally different flavor. Right? So that was, we pretty much knew that from the start. The numbers changed, the stats changed, that the two-sided health thing changed during development. It was originally like, you lose, your general dies, he's dead, but that's just refinement.
Eric, I was reading an interview that you'd done a while back, and you mentioned that psychology was the most important thing that a game designer could master.
By far, yeah.
So can you elaborate on that for us and kind of how you got to that conclusion and what that means in terms of the games that you do design?
Sure. So broadly speaking, I mean, psychology is a study of our motivation, right? The meaning behind what our motivation is and how that translates into action, right? So behavioral psychology is generally what I concentrate on. And all mechanics like play, right, when we're playing games, we're interacting with each other. It's all about controlled interaction in a safe place. And so what drives that, of course, it is our psychology. That's bottom line. So all mechanics are tools to reinforce behaviors, or reinforce reward, punish behaviors, encourage behaviors and emotions. So that's really broadly speaking. So I'm like, that's how, usually when I'm playing a game, I usually think about, like, not, what mechanic am I going to use, but it's like, what do I want players to be doing at the table? We're sitting at a table with a bunch of cards, they're blank. What are we talking about? How are we playing? How are we interacting with each other? Is it a bluffing game? Is it a mentat game? Is it a reflex game? Is it stressful? Is it relaxing? How does that work? How does that fit into the license, and then basically from there, I just pick the mechanics that I think best come together to enforce that kind of behavior, right? The fewest as possible.
Nice. There was also this line that it's a democracy, that the players that it's a democracy, that players and designers are working together to create a game.
I remember this interview.
Yeah. It was really fascinating, but it really was so fascinating, like I said, to me, and just seeing it put that way, because I'd never heard that take on game design. Usually you kind of think of it as, here's this designer with this ultimate, overlordian concept, and I'm
awesome.
I'm the genius that has created this thing, and now you players will enjoy it. But you're saying it's more of a collaborative effort between players and designers. And so what does that actually mean for you in terms of a game like Conquest, for instance?
Well, so it's asynchronously collaborative, of course, right? Because I'm not sitting there in a room with millions of players going, what do we want, right? But, so the difference between that and just crowdsourcing is, like, I believe that game design is a mixture of art and science, and you hear that all the time, but I believe it is mostly art, right? But the key thing that separates game design, the art of game design, from visual art or from media art, is that it is democratic, right? In visual art, it is the artist telling you a story, and you are passively involved, and you want to be told a story, right? You're there to be pulled into their imagination. In this game, game design is really us giving you tools to tell the stories that you want to tell. So what we're delivering in the box is, I mean, it's complete and it's good, but it is half the picture, right? I'm not delivering to you the interaction between you two guys, the trash talk between you two guys, but the behaviors that you guys are enjoying. I'm just giving you guys the tool set that bring that out. So the reason it's a mantra for me, right? So when I'm playing a game, what I want, the ultimate reaction I want is I don't ever want somebody to go, wow, that Eric Lang guy is so clever because this game does this and this and this. But I want people to be telling stories about like what they did, what they accomplished, how cool. Like I played this really cool combo. I did 50 points of damage to the Warlord, even though I needed to do 7. I did 50 on that one turn on Planet 2. And everything else is just kind of ancillary, right? So that's what I mean by collaborative, right? Like you guys, and of course, once the game hits the market, it's your game. So it's much more important to me to be listening to feedback, even reading between the lines where I can, watching what you guys are enjoying, watching what you guys aren't enjoying. And it doesn't matter what my original intent was, right? If I really wanted this to be a brutal, unforgiving combat game, but everybody who plays it wants it to be actually kind of light and casual, then they're right and I'm wrong, and the game becomes light and casual because that's what the market wants.
Nice. Well, let's talk about Conquest a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yep, not light and casual.
not light and casual. This is a game that just came out, or is just kind of being demoed here at the FFG booth.
Yep.
And what was your grand? You said you wanted it to be kind of that story to see a planet by planet kind of conflict game. What other kind of concepts did you build into Conquest that you felt were very indicative of the Warhammer experience that you wanted to create?
So I wanted the game to be, it's Warhammer, right? So I want the game to be brutal, right? And it's not Peace Hammer, right? Now, there's a specific...
Kiss Hammer, that's my kind of game.
Right?
Can we get a Kiss Hammer LCG?
Done.
All right, we're in.
There's a specific type of brutality I wanted in this, right? So when you think about what war is, Warhammer it's grim and it's dark, right? Like GR1M, right? Like really, really grim. But what makes grim is not that people are people are exploding, leaving blood all over the place. They are, and that's cool. But what makes it grim is that when you're looking at the grand scale of Warhammer, everything is resources, right? Your best dudes, they're resources. They're a cog in your wheel. And ultimately, what you're doing is you're grinding out advantage against your opponent. Lives are there to be spent.
Yeah.
Right. So the core of this game is actually economic, right? Because that's the most grim warfare out there is economic warfare. Right? It's about how much did we have to spend to destroy your stuff. I almost said the other word. Versus how much you have to spend to destroy our stuff. So that is the philosophy behind that. That's why most of the resources you get in this game are front loaded, as opposed to backloaded like there are in other games, right? Where you have a developing mana curve type of thing.
Yeah.
You start with most of the stuff you want, like in war, right? You start with most of your troops. You get reinforcements over time that you have to develop towards, but your opponent can stop you by cutting off your supply lines and stuff. But you have to think like a general, think like a warlord, think in terms of just not pride, how many guys I destroyed, what kind of glory I get, but how many resources I use to kill your stuff. So when you start getting that mindset, that's pretty brutal.
I've seen in your designs, or at least I think I've seen, certainly some evolution and kind of some concepts that you're exploring and playing around with. And one of the things that really caught me with the Star Wars card game was the edge icons on every card. And it's basically giving players a way to value a card outside of its in-play abilities, right? Outside of what it could actually do on the board. And I feel like there's some parallels there with the shielding mechanic in Warhammer, where this card, I now have to choose if am I going to put this on the board, or am I going to save this to protect one of my guys? And that goes back into your resource idea. So is that a priority for you, having various ways to use a card in different, avenues?
Not always. So shield and edge icons are actually a direct parallel, of course, right? And they're used in different ways. like the edge icons in Star Wars are to play the psychological aspect, the bluffing aspect of the game. But in this game, they are exactly right. They protect your resources, right? But not for every game, right? It's I only put it in a game where I feel that it feels that it contributes to the overall gestalt of the game. So in this game, like the decision to callously get rid of one of your cards just to save something in play, that's the type of decision a general makes, right, while he's sitting there in operations.
Yeah.
It fits that. If I was doing a fast-paced, like martial arts game or Street Fighter type game, I probably wouldn't do that, because even though it would make mechanical sense, the fact that you have to sit there and think about it too hard, that wouldn't really fit.
I also was noticing you were there when you were the final from Conquest last night here at GenCon. And it's always been so curious to me what it's like for you to come into an event and actually watch people play these games, especially something as new as Conquest. So when you come into that space, are you thinking, man, I would do things way differently here? Are you trying to think through the player's actions? Or is it just kind of an enjoyment of this creation that you brought into being?
So I really want it to be the last one, right? Like that's the goal. I come in to be like this, we brought this baby in the world, and that people are enjoying. Because that's why I do what I do. Right? I do to give other players the same joy that I got when I first started gaming, like the D&D moment. Right? I came into this game not a gamer, and I came out and said like, "Holy shit, this game!" Sorry.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Holy crap, right? That's like gaming can be this, right? Changed my life.
Yeah.
So that's why I do what I do. But so I'm trying to just bask and enjoy that, right? That's good Eric, right? Evil Eric is a little analytical, and I'll come in and be like, I'm kind of looking and seeing what people are. I'm testing my assumptions, right? So we make a lot of assumptions when we're putting the game together, and we have to draw a lot of design lines in the sand. Like, like I argue with Nate all the time, but like I said, no, this is going to be too complicated. Trust me. You'll say, no, it's not. All right, well, we'll see it on the battlefield, right? And just see what people struggle with, what they don't struggle with, what part of the rules are intuitive to people, what part are not. Win-loss ratios is not really my thing. I mean, I used to be a competitive card player, but I like designing much, much, much more.
Yeah.
So, I'm not really a stats tracker, but what I'm doing, I'm looking to see if what we assumed was fine is really fine.
Yeah.
And very relieved when it turns out to be true, right? And even more evil Eric is kind of looking for problems, right? What are people complaining about? What are people not enjoying?
Yeah.
And to see if it's trending, right? I try not to focus on isolated incidents, but just watch lots of games at once.
Yeah.
What I know earlier you mentioned there's a lot of factors that go into a game, right? And you mentioned there's a lot of factors that go into a game, and you mentioned that it's more art than science, which I love, by the way. But for you, how much of designing a game is you've got to obviously keep balance in mind,
of course,
right?
Yep.
But how big of a deal to you is balance versus the experience? Like, what weighs heavier on your design mind, I guess?
Well, so the way I've kind of evolved my opinion on this in the last few years, but I don't think of it as a dichotomy or a dualism at all, right? Like balance it's just a part of the experience, right? So it's a necessary part, but it's just a part. So when I'm thinking, especially near the beginning of the design, when I'm thinking broad strokes, I don't think about balance at all, right? I think if it's fun, we'll put the hours in, we'll balance it. Because really, balance is just grind. Yeah. Right? It's playing over and over and over again, making small tweaks. There's a lot of skill to it, but it's grind. So I'm more importantly considering, is the game delivering this? Is it delivering the behavior and the rewards and the specific types of fun that we want to do? Balance does come on the back end, and basically what we strive for, I'm going to speak for myself, not for the entire department. Basically what we're striving for is what we call reasonable balance, right? So you cannot, it's an asymmetrical game, all these games are asymmetrical, this one a little bit more than most, is we want, of course it's not chess, right? And it's contextual, the cards are drawn randomly, they're distributed randomly. We want everybody to feel like they have a chance. We want to feel like it's fair, that the better player will beat the worst player slightly, like more than 50% of the time.
Yeah.
So skill will matter. But on the other hand, it's very important, at least to me, that when we're putting stuff together, that the balance is built into the foundation of the game, that the underlying math is rock solid, but that we can't possibly see all ends, right? So we don't. I guess there's this illusion that we we look at every possible combination or every possible deck type, every possible draw. We stat it out in Excel. A, that's impossible and crazy. And B, I don't think it's useful, because if we could architect every single deck, every single permutation of every deck, 3 of us in a room, right, then the game is too shallow. Yeah. Right, then it's not going to be. It'll be solved in the internet in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So reasonable balance is the foundation is really strong. We see a lot of branches, a lot of strategic branches, and in a microcosm, they play against each other pretty well. And we have to rely on experience a lot, right? Like between Nate and I think we have 20 years of card game experience. So
it's a couple.
It works, right? So we're wrong sometimes, but I'd rather be a little bit wrong. I'd rather guess a little wrong and have to correct than be perfectly balanced, whatever that means.
Or safe.
Right? Yeah, safe. Like, safe is boring. Safe is the cancer of gaming, right? Because of this kind of gaming. People won't complain on the boards. They'll just silently leave. They won't like that. They won't say, "Oh, I hate the game," or like that. They'll find something else, because the fun is in the rough edges and it's on the rails. Right? When the game feels like the best possible fun is when you feel like anything else different. If anything had come out slightly different, this game would have exploded. Right? So it's a razor's edge.
So when you're making a game, in your opinion, what makes a good game?
What makes a good
what are the key marks of a good game?
So this is the evolution of my thinking to this point is it's going to sound a little PR-y, but it is actually true. A good game is a game that delivers the very specific fun promise that's set on the box to the audience that it's intended for. That's the only way I can quantify fun, right? Because I'm not going to look at a game. I'm not going to say fun is this, fun is that. Like, fun is a game that's a test of skill. Well, that's obviously not true of mental skill. That's obviously not true for party games, but they're fun.
Yeah.
Fun is balanced. Well, poker is about the least balanced game you can get. In instanced. XCOM, the game I just came out with, is stressful and it's stressful and punishing. And some people are going to say, "Wow, that is not fun." But the goal of that game was to have people mopping their brow at the end of the game.
That's awesome,
right? That's fun. Right?
Yeah.
I think XCOM is fun. That is the value. This value promise that we gave you. I think Uno is a fun game because it is a light conversational game that takes up only a certain very small percentage of your bandwidth. It gives you context for fun conversation. 2 or 3 meaningful decisions in the game, so that you kind of stop and can concentrate on this, and then boom, you got a story to talk about. Nice. So that game is fun for its audience. That's awesome.
Well, Eric, you're obviously an incredible mind for design, and your catalog certainly proves it. And it really makes me wonder, and it's kind of the last thing that I'm wondering. How did you get into this? How did you get on the design path?
Into design?
Yeah.
Ramen. Long hours. Very little sleep. So I've been designing games since I was a kid. Right?
Yeah.
I used to visit my grandmother in Germany when I was 6, 7 years old, and we would play games all the time. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was modding these things because they were all terrible games. The German mass market games are terrible. I said it. So I was modding them all the time, and I was designing games, right? But at the time, I had no idea. And I would make up little fun activities for my friends in school all the time. I just loved entertaining people inside a closed play space. When Magic: The Gathering came out, after I'd already been a gamer for 10 years as a D&D, I saw at that moment I was like, you know what? I can do this for a living. I want to do this for a living. So I just rearranged my entire life to do it for a living. right? So I reduced my expenses. I moved to a cheaper part of the neighborhood. I went and worked at a game store for 2 years to learn about how to run a game store, what makes games important to other parts of the industry rather than just from a player point of view. Worked at Nintendo for a little while as an intern, not fun.
Not fun.
Then I did educational, but I did play testing for FASA. That's a company that did Shadowrun BattleTech way back when. Did some little bit of just design games like crazy. Just design games that were terrible, and my friends ripped them up to bits. But I just got better at it over time, and didn't really get paid for it until '97. And then when I started my own company to make games, which I hated because I hated running a company because I didn't get to design games. But during that period, I met Chris Peterson from Fantasy Flight, right? And at that point, the rest is history.
Nice. Well,
that's a short version.
That's pretty much what I've got. Zach, do you have anything else for Eric?
No, I'm just so happy that you sat down and talked with us. I appreciate it so much, and I look forward to doing this again in the future.
I can't believe we haven't done this before.
It's crazy.
Well, more to come, Eric. Thank you so much, man. We truly appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Keep up the awesome podcast. Podcast? Videocast. I said videocast.
Well, this has been Eric Lang, great, obviously incredible mind for design, who has a lot of work that he does with Fantasy Flight and other companies. So check his designs out, check his games out, and GenCon 2014. Thanks for watching.